This is the Inkpulp podcast. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Comics, hip hop, life. Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast. I'm your host, Sean Crystal. Welcome back, everybody. Today's episode is a little different. This is the first time I'm putting one of these up on Farside Network. It's me inking a commission and filming it, speeding it up, doing a voiceover, explaining my process. So I'm curious who this connects with. I'm curious to see. Part of me as an artist in my art journey has been as an educator. I developed and built the sequential art department at SCAD Atlanta with my good friend Pat Quinn. And I have to kind of specify Atlanta because our program, I feel, was light years ahead of what was going on in other places. So I enjoyed the classroom. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed passing knowledge on. And I don't love working for a company where I can't do things the way I feel they need to be done. And ultimately, I just hit a point where I couldn't do both. It was too much. I didn't have the time to give to both. And I had been teaching for a while and felt I'd kind of like plateaued as a professor. And was ready to just give myself fully into my art. And I have. And it's been a good 5 years of that. And I do find myself missing teaching, because honestly, teaching art requires you to learn more about art and not say the same thing over and over. And I feel like I just kind of hit that point. I was just repeating myself, and I wasn't developing as an artist enough. Well, that's not true. I was working for Marvel. I was developing a lot. I didn't have the time or mental energy to keep up with both. But my teaching was suffering. And I want to get back to that. And I mean, I'm just trying to find ways, like when you're an artist and then like you're just kind of like you're becoming fully independent, you start to think to yourself, who am I to the public? What are people going to want to see? What are they going to respond to? What is true to me that people respond to? Not letting the tail wag the dog, but what about what I do and who I am is attractive to other people and makes them want to follow the work I do and be a fan? So I do feel I have something to offer in the realm of teaching, as along with producing art. They kind of go hand in hand in my mind. You know, producing art requires constant thinking and constant problem solving. So I'm finding a way to bring it back. I've mentioned it a little bit. It's Inkpulp Instruction, and it's coming. I think I was aiming for September 1st, but I think October 1st is better. It gives me more time to make the launch as strong as possible, and I need it to be a strong launch. I really need it to be a strong launch. So keep your eyes open for that. And we'll see how it goes. So this is kind of like, seeing what you think of getting an inside look into an artist's mind as they solve some problems and maybe learn something. I don't know. Let me know. If you're on the Farside page, you got my email address on there. Let me know. If you're on my YouTube channel, leave a comment. Just make sure you follow me, like it, and we're all good. Enjoy. All right, let's get started inking this Etrigan the Demon, my favorite. So, yeah, I mean, the focus of the piece is obviously going to be this. You can't see it in the pencils, but around his face. I framed his face with the skulls that are floating around there. He's got this big explosive energy blast coming out of his face. So as usual, I'm starting in an area where it's going to be pretty black because my brush is very wet right now. And you can see, there's the dryness I'm always looking for. It's starting to come out, so I'm hitting some contours. And I'm going big and bold on these contours. And now I'm doing some feathering, I guess you call it. I don't know, that flick. Now this area, I've talked about this before, but I really like when I create these parallel or vanishing lines in a sea of black. And right now I'll fade it into the black a little better, and it'll become like a little area in this blackness where the little light creeps in. If you do it right, the illusion works. And so here I am fading it right here, and it's there. So now I'm putting a little more gray in it. So there, it's just a little bit of light creeping into the black. Now this shape that I'm inking here, the Frayed Cape, on this take on Etrigan, I think it's the first time I feel like I really nailed my own version of Etrigan and how I'd really like to see him be in terms of the shapes, that giant hand. And I went really metal. And the shape of this torn cape, I just wanted to be really jagged. I was thinking of, I remember the design for Jafar in the Aladdin Disney movie. There, I'm fading that in a little bit too. And he was all angles, whereas, or maybe it was Hades. I think it was Jafar. He was all angles versus all these really curvy forms for Aladdin, Jasmine, her father even, were these soft, like curvy forms. So I was thinking about that when I drew the cape and designed this. I wanted Etrigan to be sharp and jagged in a lot of areas. Here's another area where I figured some light would creep into the underside of that deltoid. And those, I love those dry brush flicks that I do. It's a feathering effect, but it's different. I grew up doing wet feathers where you pull in, and these are dry feathers where you flick out. So there I am. I create that little rectangle with the bars. Now I'm going to darken them. Now I'm going to fade them in. Fade in the other side. And there you go. So it gives a little volume into the dark areas, which I really enjoy. I'm getting a little bit off camera here. I try to keep my eyes on it. It's a little tricky. Yeah, like this new way of being where I'm filming myself so often. It takes some of the like concentration away, but not in a bad way. Here again, on the underside of the pectoral muscle, I want some light to creep in. So I create those hatchworks. That right there was, sometimes when you're working really dry, you get some dry ink collecting on the tip of your brush. It creates like a longer, finer tip on your brush, and you got to like pick it off a little bit. But yeah, this piece, I'm really happy with the composition of it, which again, I don't think you can really appreciate until it's fully inked. But this is what I want my work to be. So up in the face area, I'm going to get into some fine line detail work and creating this ear, or this demonic ear form, giving it a little volume with some thicker lines and some thinner lines and a little bit of feathering work. You'll see it at the end of the video. I'll make sure we pop up a final version of it. But I had a lot of fun inking this. I had a lot of fun drawing this. now it's figuring out how to make like an ear fade into that animal demon ear. And on these horns, on the like horns and spikes, I like having like that line in the middle be like the highlight, and then give one side some hatch work. So there's the highlight, there's the little hatch work. It gives a nice volume to those conical forms. There, I was just picking that tip off again. So yeah, now we can't see what I'm doing, and that's not helpful. It's not entertaining, Sean. It's not good. All right. Now we're getting back into it, and it's all off camera. Now I'm back in camera. Now we're going to work on his face. This is always the hardest part, where I know I have to be really precise. I've been working in areas up until this point where I didn't have to be that precise. So now that I'm in the face, I'm very aware that I need to be precise. But by this point, I'm pretty warmed up, so I know it'll be fine. And yes, I know I turn my paper around a lot. We've talked about this before. I know some people think it's crazy, but inking for me is all about the angles. I want to be able to push and pull lines properly. I use my arm a lot now. I mean, the face area, I'm using a lot of my wrist, but I use my arm. And there you go again, Sean, going off camera. But I caught it and adjusted it. Now I'm on camera. Notice that a lot of the hatch work that I'm doing is all pointing to one vanishing point. And when you get to see the big explosion coming out of his mouth and stuff, the whole composition is built on that vanishing point. So the more I'm rendering in that direction, the more the composition will work solidly. And again, I don't know if I've ever really talked about this, but I use a Raphael 8404 size 2, not a size 02. Size 02 is tiny. This is a size 2. I might, part of me thinks maybe I need to go back to a 3. I don't know. But I made the mistake of ordering a set of 02s, and they came, and I gave them to my daughter. I mean, it was like $70 worth of brushes, but she wants to start practicing with a brush, and that small of a size is kind of a good way to start with the brush. You can't like get that fat. There's not a big belly on it, so controlling it's much easier. But then once you get the control down, you want that belly. You want to be able to lay into the brush a bit to get all the variety of thicknesses and strokes. Here's the teeth. There I am picking off the tip of the brush. My ink formula, which I will cover in the future on one of my Inkpulp Instruction videos, which are coming. I'm building it. But the ink now that I've been using is getting a little older, so it's getting kind of thick, and therefore it's drying faster, and it's getting a little tar-like. Still usable, but it's giving me some little headaches. I'll probably mix some thinner ink into it, just to give it thin it out just a touch. So in the face, these black shapes and the rendering, they're all really essential to give form to the demon. And like I think I started to say, his teeth, I really wanted just to leave them white, so they really just pop against all the black. I figured too much rendering in there would take away from the teeth and make that area a little too busy. Getting in those fine gum lines. It's coming along nicely though. I'm looking, we're about 4 minutes into this 12-minute video, which means we're about a third of the way through, and I'm looking at it, wondering, it looks like there's a lot more to be done, but we'll see. I think when you create a really good composition, the focal point takes time, but as you get away from it, you're dealing with much bigger, simpler shapes, and it goes much faster. I thought about not speeding up this, but it was 3 hours long. So this piece took me 3 hours to ink, which isn't a long period of time. I don't think that's, I think that's moving at a decent clip. It's not slow, it's not fast, but for what I do and the effects I'm achieving, and the fact that this is all brush and I'm dipping and all that jazz, 3 hours is pretty good, I think. I'm happy with that. So once I get these gums in, yeah, man, that brush is nice and perfect right here. I can tell by the way. I love watching myself move with the brush. Here I'm giving a little texture to the ear. Just giving some dry brush flicks on those like bat wing areas where the flesh is thinner. I thought that would look cool. Here, so now when I fill in the black, those teeth are going to really pop and that face is going to really come together, especially when I get the lower part of the jaw rendered. Yeah, look at that. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting into the rendering on the face a bit. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, I'm doing some really fine feather work. It's like a really light gray. Yeah, there, you can see it good there. That's a nice touch. And you'll notice like I just jumped over to the arm. It was probably because the brush wasn't dry enough for me to feel like I could get the fine lines I wanted. And now I'm back because now it probably feels dry enough. So I had to go to an area and work out some of the wetness. Sorry, I keep yawning. I've been going pretty hard lately. I'm a little tired. And when I go hard, it's not partying, it's working. But yeah, these, so I'm gonna do a little flicking here, fade out that shadow form. And then I do these little feather marks, right? Not there. Right there. No, not yet. No, there. Now I'm doing them. Those are hard to see on camera, but those are just using the tip of the brush. Now I'm off camera. I'm not paying attention. Sean, look up and realize what's happening. There we go. I caught it. Here I wanted the underside of the jaw to have a little shadow so the form feels more volumetric. And I think I'm going into the neck now. Yes, there we go, into the neck. And so the part of the neck to the right of where I am, I want to have more roundness to it. So I'll do some hatch work right here. Boom, 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 where that gives it a little bit of a shadow, and you get the wrapping around effect, that overlapping. And overlapping is a topic that I cover in my my first Inkpulp Instruction video, which is about line and how to use line, why use line, what is a line, and I do talk about creating depth with line alone. And one of the big principles that I address is overlapping, and how much that helps create depth in a piece. So look for that. The Indiegogo might be up when this comes out. I think I'm launching that September 1st. I don't remember when this one's scheduled for release, but please keep your eye on social media for that. I'm very proud and happy of the work we've done in creating that video. It's being put together right now. We did the shoot a month ago or so, and it went really well. Created a lot of cool pieces of artwork for it. And I have big plans for this whole educational line. So here we are. We're about at the halfway point of this video, and you're thinking this doesn't look half done, but the bulk of the work is in these areas I'm working in. I got to work my way down the arm and into the skull belt, which I love. I loved giving Etrigan this just heavy metal feel, as he should. I'd love to maybe give him a hip hop feel on the next one, like lean in the hip hop. I don't know. DC doesn't know what the fuck to do with Etrigan. He's so awesome and would make such a cool comic. They just don't know what the fuck to do with him because they don't know what the fuck to do with much of anything these days. We'll just leave it at that. So now I'm probably rinsing out my brush a bit, and it's probably getting a little dry and the tip's getting a little funky, so it needs a minute. Or I need to like wash it. I can see my shadow work, so I'm doing something off camera. But a brush, it's a very not finicky, a particular instrument, and you really, when you get in tune with it and you get to know it, you work with it well. And sometimes you need to, like, when you've been working too long and the ink gets too gummy in there, you just got to refresh it. So here I come. I guess it's time to work my way down the arm. And again, Sean, you went off camera, you dummy. The arm and the torso, I was really happy with the like sculptural chiaroscuro shadow work that I created. And I knew when I got those blacks in there and the subtle grays that there'd be a lot of sculptural volume. I'm also really leaning into and embracing my geometric style of drawing and seeing. It's very natural to me. And I think it's finally, after years and years of drawing, it's finally starting to become a style that I feel works. Whereas I feel like I spent a lot of years figuring out how it works, or maybe just gaining the understanding, the experience needed so that my geometric way of drawing didn't look amateurish, but really had a defined look and a purposeful look stylistically. And I think that's the only thing that only comes from practice and experience. Again, I'm off camera. I'm rendering this forearm. Oh man, I was happy with so much of the arm. I wish you could see me inking it. I'll pull it in. I kept the computer facing me, and I kept looking up when I could to make sure I was on camera. The shot's a little tight, but I wanted it tight. Oh, now it's going really fast. All right, so yeah, wow. Ooh, it's going super fast. Yeah, I figured something like this might happen. But yeah, so there's not much to say. I guess the final 5 minutes are going to be like lightning speed. We're going to have to work out the kinks on this, but yeah, that arm really came together nicely. Really came together nicely. And those dark black fingernails and the texture, I was really happy with this piece. You know, this is the Logitech Brio camera I'm filming with, and I'm experimenting with different cameras. And you can see me. I'm very comfortable pulling my lines at this point. I'm very loose, pulling big, long strokes. I love this. Sap, 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 sap. I just love inking. I love inking with a brush. I love the whole craft of it. I love the act of it. Here I'm setting these fingers back in space by rendering them all black so that they create some depth in the hand there. That's an arm right there. That is an arm. That is Etrigan's arm. I love the skinny wrist. I love the bulk of the shoulder and the bicep and tricep and the forearm. He's just a badass demon. Now I'm getting back into that cape. This shape, I'm really, really liking what I did with it. The reason it's hard to see in the explosion by his mouth is I didn't pencil that area as tightly on purpose. I'm trying to give myself areas where I can riff with the brush a little more and not worry about being as precise. And yeah, there you go. I love all the tears in this cape. I love the jagged edges of it. Oh, I guess we're getting the torso now. Yeah, I know. We're working out the kinks with how to do these sped up videos. This clip is going by fast, but the torso, I'm sorry, I'm off camera too. What kind of show you running here, Sean? And that skull, why render that skull the way I did when it's not, it's along the focal line. If you follow the claw in the arm up through the torso, up through the face, that's kind of the point of seeing everything. And then I'm using a lot of graphic blacks on the jagged cape and then on his torn black pants, which you'll see when I render out the end. The other thing is I added this to his chest. Etrigan always has just a piece of like a circular metal piece right here, just a circle. And that's what the cape connects to. And I was like, this is a demon. And like I got into the narrative of who the character is. Jason Blood's kind of trapped in this like, I don't know if you'd call it symbiotic, but this demon's trapped in him. And I thought like whatever I could do to add like the idea that this demon's caged in him. So I added that big metal circle, I like almost to give him the feeling like he's chained up where his cape meets, and also on the coming out of the eye sockets of the skull, you got those circle forms again where he could be chained up. I'd like to play with a lot of this idea more with this character. You know, it's not that I want to work for DC. I even thought about like maybe just making my own demon book, not naming him Etrigan, but maybe an obvious homage to Kirby's Etrigan, and just telling that story. So that cape shape is wicked awesome, and I love it. Now I the bones and the skulls floating around his face are just the psychedelic demon horror shit. But notice every skull I approach stylistically a little differently. This is more like a Magnola skull, really simplified, cartoony skull, which I liked the idea of that. And there you go. And then the next skull. No, now we're getting into the boom. I mean, don't forget, Etrigan speaks in rhymes, so his voice is kind of like a symbol of him. So I wanted this power just erupting from his mouth. And this also gave me an opportunity to do those dry brush flick feathers that I love so much. They have such energy when they're done, and they fade so beautifully. This skull is more like true to me and the way I draw, kind of a cartoony realism with exaggerated features. And then the other skull that's floating around in the above it, that one's kind of a hybrid between the two. So I thought it would be cool, like kind of psychedelic, to have these different types of skulls floating around him, like different realities. And I like this idea that things are floating around the demon like horror like skulls and bones, and maybe I should have added some mushrooms. I thought about that. That'd be fun too. I want to play more and more with psychedelic imagery. And there I am on the forehead of the skull, giving that little gray area in the middle of the black. Seems kind of like a perfect area for it. Sometimes when I fuck that up too much, I just black it in because it's nice to have, but if you fuck it up and black it out, it doesn't ruin the piece. And all the like brush hatch work, it's all just building volume. I mean, doing the hatch work in the eye socket around where it's perfectly black just sets that part of the socket back in space a little. And that's sort of the whole game with rendering, is creating depth, creating volume, giving form, trying to make things look three-dimensional on a two-dimensional surface, the whole illusion of drawing thing. And here I am kind of wrapping up. I'm almost done with the piece, and I'm really just focusing on getting this black mass of power emanating from the white explosive power coming out of his mouth. So I'm using contrast. I'm also not going to render in the white very much. I wanted that area to pop. And there's so much, like the cape is so like so many little white shapes. I didn't want to compete with that. I love that. Laying, when the brush gets really dry and you can really lay into it and push down and get a really fat, dry brush mark. It's really dry. I love that. I don't know how helpful it is to explain things just by saying I love it, but I do. I love the art of inking. I love the craft of it. And I'm just going to fill in the blacks. One more skull to go. And I do believe I captured some ink splatters at the end here coming up. We'll get there. Yeah, and filling in black's nice. It's really, when you're just getting familiar with the brush, filling in blacks is a great place to take a little time and experiment with mark making. And I highly encourage it. I spent many years doing that. Like, just let me practice my feathering here. It's going to be blacked out anyway. But it builds your confidence, and it allows you to explore the marks a brush can make in a safe environment so that you don't have to worry about ruining the piece. And it really is kind of essential way to get familiar and comfortable with the brush. Which, I mean, that's really the big part of the game at first, is getting comfortable with it. It's a very uncomfortable tool to draw with at first, but when you gain that confidence and you get that comfort, there is just nothing like it for me. And we've been doing these inking videos, podcasts, you know, the ones with Klaus and Tim and Jim, and then also the ones with Tommy Lee, Troy Nixie, and Jim. And we've really been talking about inking a lot and our tools. And you know, Tommy uses brush, but he also uses pens, and Jim uses pens mainly, and then Troy uses these brush pens mainly, and Klaus uses all brush, and Tim uses a lot of wet brush media, where I use dry. And it's nice to see what everyone likes to use and why they like to use it. So please understand that when I'm preaching the pleasantries of the brush, that's for me. That's what I love. That's what I do. But it's not the only way. I mean, everyone's just got to create and find their way and what works for them. And this, for me, I don't know. Once I'm all brush. This whole piece was done with a brush, and 99.9% of my work is done with brush. I know on the Scarecrow and the Marilyn Manson pieces, I was using some nib, and I am enjoying trying to get to know that. So I do like to challenge myself and try new materials. So there's that. But now, yes, now I'm setting up for an ink splatter where I want it to come out of his mouth. I am masking off areas with white paper and tap, 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 boom, boom, boom. That's all it takes. I put a little extra water in my brush so the ink is thinner. and it taps right out. And then I guess I decided I wanted some more splatters here. Oh, white. That's right. I forgot. So I'm using a toothbrush there. Boom. Got a little white explosion coming out. And there's my stamp and my signature. So we're going to pop up the final piece here now. Very happy with it. And I hope you are too. I hope you gained some knowledge. I hope hearing me explain my process was helpful. And I hope you too now share love for Etrigan the Demon. Thanks for listening. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. This is the Inkpulp Podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.